What did 119 really mean by techniques of activation of the human organism by remote electronic means? Although it had been accidental at first, Olds and Milner had discovered the so-called pleasure center of the brain through an extension of the technique Wilder-Penfield first developed.
A new window on the brain was opened in 1953, when a rat fortuitously evidenced a neuro-rewarding effect by returning to the place where he had been when an electrical stimulus was applied to the brain via chronically implanted electrodes.
In terms of conditioned behavior, this electrically induced reward became an end unto itself. In 1954, Olds created a reward map of the brain featuring locations where electrical stimulation caused mammals to come back for more. The reward map held true for rats, cats, monkeys, and humans. By 1961, James Olds, who'd been attending Macy's sister conferences on the central nervous system during the late 50s alongside Frank Fremont Smith, Howard Liddell, and other cybernetics acolytes, made history after he implanted an electrode into the pleasure center of a lab rat's brain and conditioned it to trigger its own self-satisfying electrical stimulation.
This is a device which trains the animal to turn on the stimulus for himself. Here you notice the animal wandering toward the pedal. When he first touches it, he gets no stimulation. It's not connected yet.
By pressing a simple lever.
Then, one time he touches the pedal, it does turn on the stimulation. You can see the lights go on.
Within this cybernetic loop of electric stimulus and reward, Olds and Milner's experimental rats quickly succumbed to self-stimulating their own brains repeatedly, thousands of times, foregoing their own natural drives for hunger, sex, and even willingly enduring immense pain.
Now, I will electrify the grid. The animal must cross an area that gives a very painful shock to the feet in order to get to the pedal and stimulate the brain.
Rats implanted with these electrodes continued to push and push and push the lever again and again and again, even until the point of death, just to receive this stimulating electrical reward. Clearly, these researchers had uncovered something with far-reaching implications.
This shows a rat is willing to pay a very high price in order to get to the pedal.
In 1953, this series of therapeutic research experiments was conducted by Dr. Robert Heath of Tulane University. His subjects responded to electrical stimulation of isolated brain centers implanted with electrodes. We see here the possibility for direct physical manipulation of the mind and personality.
Feel good, do you think? Or if you do it too much, does it have any bad effects on you?
No bad effects at all.
Most of the scientists who conduct these experiments say that because they do not yet understand enough about the brain, these techniques should not be used on humans. But this man says they should. He is Dr. Robert Heath of Tulane University Medical School in New Orleans.
Yeah, I just feel like I don't have any thoughts like a human being. I'm just an animal walking around on the earth. Please don't do me like this. Please don't. I can't stand it. I don't like to feel like this.
That's right, that's right. That's right, that's right. That's right. Now look at that smile you got now.
Why does that make me do that? I don't like to do that.
You really told me off, remember?
I know I did, but I couldn't help it.
Dr. Heath paralleled in the human mind the Olds concept of the self-stimulating rat, in some cases turning over the control to his electrode-implanted mental patients.
Dr. Heath inserted electrodes in the region of her brain he thought might be associated with pleasure.
Who quickly learned that they could mitigate pain or induce a deep-seated pleasure or even sexual arousal with the push of a button.
Find this button there.
That's number 2 button.
Most pleasurable.
How do you feel? You're trying to tell me how it excites you, is that it?
No, I think it's somewhat of a sexy button.
Dr. Heath also notoriously attempted to convert a homosexual man using brain stimulation to trigger his sexual centers in the presence of a female prostitute.
There's no way that I can see that it could be abused or misused. The control is in his hands. But some people fear that the control won't stay in the patient's hands, that electrical stimulation could be used to manipulate people rather than to treat mental illness.
By placing electrodes deep within the brain, investigators, including Dr. Jose Delgado of Yale University, have located precise regions that activate emotions such as fear and rage, and basic drives such as hunger and sex. Electrodes can carry currents into the brain and allow the scientists to control behavior.
By the end of the 50s, the art of brain stimulation had advanced from long, conspicuous wire leads to more discreet remote control technology, and Delgado had virtually mastered an elaborate program of behavior modifications which he demonstrated in his monkeys.
The motor cortex is probably like a large keyboard, able to play the strings of muscular contraction and to produce movements.
In his Yale laboratory, Dr. Delgado has gone even further. By pushing a button, he controls life in a colony of monkeys. He can direct their behavior and change the neatly ordered structure of their society.
Delgado could turn everything from emotions to actions on and off like a light switch.